最初から分かってた。この旅はこんな風にしか終わらないんだって。
Tales of Symphonia is a game that I love, a game that means too much to me. I want to try my best to express why through this crappy video essay. Now, this isn't meant to be a review, more of an analysis of the characters, a study of the themes and context and various aspects of the game. I'll be jumping around from topic to topic, so I'm sorry if it sounds like there's no cohesion to all of this. Now, not unlike other stories, Symphonia borrows a lot of concepts, ideas, and core plotlines from other games, books, and movies. It even takes the extra step and goes out of its way to be cliched with these ideas, but then subverts them. Best way to explain what I'm talking about is to go over the opening of the game. Symphonia takes place in a medieval-esque fantasy land called Silveron, populated with humans, elves, and dwarfs. This world is watched over by the goddess Martel, who protects the land. But the world is slowly dying thanks to the draining resource of mana, the element that gives everything life. And there are evil beings known as designs, half-elves that have human ranches where they kill humans en masse. To save the planet and the people, there is a chosen of mana who must ascend to become an angel and meet with Martel. To do that, the chosen and her party must overcome harsh trials. To help them with that, they're equipped with X-Spheres, gems that you craft onto your body that provide superhuman abilities. The Chosen is born with a unique X-Sphere that allows them to ascend to angelhood and save the world. This game gives you all the information within the first 5 or so minutes of starting up. With this opening expedition dump, the game also gives you the first impression of your main characters. First up, you have the protagonist Lloyd, a stubborn hotshot who thinks before he acts, but with the best intentions in mind. His best friends are the pure-hearted chosen one, Colette, who will always choose the greater good over herself, and your nerdy friend/magic user, Genus. After the character introduction, the starting thread of regenerating the world begins and our party makes its way to their first dungeon. Wow, you might be saying, this sounds like the most generic plot setup I've ever heard. And you'd be right, except for one important factor. So, about 2 paragraphs ago, where I talked about the setup of the game, the goddess, the dying land, the evil designs. What if I told you that entire setup is a lie? The game is self-aware of how corny it sounds, and immediately leaves trails that there's something more going on behind the scenes.
I won't let you Desians get away with anything!
Desians?
What's so funny?
Well then, die at the hands of the Desians you so hate. Get them!
This game is also a master of foreshadowing. Just look at this early scene between Colette and Lloyd.
What are you talking about? You're going to keep on living and regenerate the world.
Yeah.
Desians. Up till now, I always thought my mom died in an accident. Now I'll be able to see you become an angel with my own eyes. You just have 2 fathers. Just think of yourself as being lucky for having more than most people do.
There's a lot going on in this scene. I hope you also included the moon if you're counting. Yes, even that's foreshadowing. The opening of this game have characters speaking half lies and truths, even if they're not aware of it themselves. And this running concept of presenting a very cliched idea and flipping it around even works on the main characters themselves. Colette from the start is shown to be a kind-hearted, pure maiden character. She's the chosen of mana that will bring life back to the planet and drive away the evil beings that lurk on it. She does this by completing trials, each bringing her closer to becoming an angel. But hey, you want to know a secret about being the chosen? Being the chosen means you were literally born to die. Your birth is preordained by the church through forced marriages, and at a very young age you are told and reminded and celebrated of your eventual premature death. The amount of pressure and trauma that this puts on you would be too much to bear. What does this do to a person? Colette takes what might be a terrible fate and embraces it. She's always being selfless, never thinking about herself, but of others. Because through her sacrifice, She believes she's able to make others happy. Through going about the regeneration of the world, Colette loses what makes herself human. She lies and hides this from Lloyd and the party because she thinks they'll be better off if they didn't know. She distances herself from the group and feigns being okay. If she told her friends, would they be able to help her? Or maybe they couldn't stop what will happen to her at the end. Genus is your book smarts yin to Lloyd's street smarts yang. They work off each other very well. Genus might not be as prevalent as other characters throughout the entirety of the story, but he's a strong supporting role that gives out good insight and backs up Lloyd when he's struggling. Genus and his sister Rain state to be full-blooded elves through the first act of the game, but in truth, they're half-elves. Now, in this world, humans are fine, and elves are fine, but half-elves? People don't like half-elves. There's prejudice against them. They're told that half-elves aren't as good as humans or elves, and they're generally treated like trash. Because of this, Genus hates humans. He states this multiple times throughout the story. Lloyd and other friends he meets are exceptions to this. Now, hate can be a powerful motivator, but Genus uses this as motivation to prove that half-elves are just as good as any other race. He studies incredibly hard in part because it's his passion, and in part to prove himself to others. Even when he's shown again and again throughout the game what can happen to elves. Murders, borderline slavery, murder again, turning into a lifeless being, Genus works to make a difference by believing in Lloyd and his friends that they can stop this cycle of fantastic racism. From the outset, Lloyd comes off as an idiot with a heart of gold, but there's so much more going on behind the scenes. As Colette is a deconstruction of the sacred chosen archetype, Lloyd is a deconstruction of an idealistic hero, a person who wants to save the world, who wants to save everybody. Lloyd is challenged throughout his adventure on just how unreasonable that can be. He wants to save everybody and create a world where everybody can live together. He's shown repeatedly that a world like that might not be able to exist. This doesn't stop Lloyd. Instead, it only makes his resolve that much stronger to continue on for those who have fallen and for those who have been left behind. Lloyd's an earnest man who's constantly making mistakes. He takes action partially for his own reason and partially for Colette. He truly does want to make the world a better place, but his fault is in not thinking of the consequence of his actions. Something that he's reminded about time and time again. On top of that, he justifies his choices in the early game because they have Colette with them. Lloyd has to be in the right because there's a Messiah with them. And if the Messiah is with them, everything will turn out okay. But it doesn't. About a third of the way through the game, the party makes its way to the Tower of Salvation, where Colette can finally become an angel and save the world. At this point in the game, it's revealed to Lloyd that his entire journey to save the world has been a sham. It turns out that all of it, every temple and trial they went through, was for preparing Colette's body to be taken over by the goddess Martel. At that point, Colette will truly die. They are told that her dying is the only way to revive this wasting world. And what I think is narratively interesting is that at this point in the game, Colette gives her role as the protagonist up and hands it to Lloyd. Once they get to the Tower of Salvation, and Lloyd realizes he has to choose between Colette or the world, it's a chilling realization to him. A part of him wants to give up and save the world. He even admits to this himself. But then he realizes that saving the world means nothing if Colette isn't there to live in it. That this whole entire ritual is terrible, and he's got to stop it. When the party jumps to the new world, Tetheala, a world parallel to Sylvarant for the second act, it's a new starting point for Lloyd and Colette. Lloyd is in the driver's seat for the rest of the game, and his goal is to save everybody. The planet, Colette, and everybody in between. Okay, so who wants to talk about racism? Hold on, I'm going somewhere with this. Also, discrimination. One of the running themes in this game is that people hate things they don't understand, or hate things being between two options. Half-elves are treated less than a living being. Both worlds of Symphonia has discrimination against them. Tetheala treating them as slaves, and Sylvarant openly discriminates against them. And different groups of half-elves take this different ways. The Designs, for example, find themselves superior to humans and elves, and fight back at an underpowered and defenseless people of Sylvarant. While people like Rain and Genus's mom hides in a completely optional area of Exire, a hidden location in the game. Now, Exire is a floating island of half-elves that chose to stay isolated from the rest of the world. This is showing that those caught in between aren't allowed to live their lives the way they want. They can either fight back to prove their superiority, or hide to avoid capture and discrimination. This concept of those being stuck in between is present throughout the game, even with the main party. Colette ends up not sacrificing herself to save the world, but also doesn't fail and die like the other chosen before her. So what purpose can she serve now that she's not an angel or a human anymore? This trait is present with most of the party members too. Lloyd, Genus, Rain, Sheena, Zelos, Regal, Presea, they share this struggle of being stuck between two worlds where they don't belong in either, which leads me into the next trait that all these characters share, being survivors. Over the past 3 months, I've been reading Reverse Design Final Fantasy VII by Patrick Holleman. It's an incredibly dense discussion on why Final Fantasy VII was made the way it was, why character classes were removed, how dungeons and enemies are designed to host a variety of challenges to the player, and how the endgame offers a wide option of powering up outside of just levels. Now I think Final Fantasy VII and Symphonia share a lot of similar design philosophy, the forefront being that all the main characters have had their lives ruined by one common antagonistic force. One of the most interesting and obvious things that I never thought about that Patrick Holleman brings up is another trait that most of the main characters share, which he calls the Survivor's Trio. There's 3 traits to this. The first trait is having a near-death experience, the second is losing the world that defined them, and the third is having something that connects them to their past. A great example that Patrick points out in his book is Barrett Wallace. Barrett trusted and believed in the Shinra Corporation, and that ended up getting his town destroyed, his best friends and many of the townsfolk dying, and him losing his arm. After this ordeal, the entire surviving townsfolk blamed Barrett for this horrific incident. This changed Barrett, who left his town that he outgrew due to the guilt and anger to become a gruff, angry eco-terrorist to make the world a better place for his adoptive daughter, Marlene. I think this design choice in FF7 for characters echoes tremendously in Tales of Symphonia. A great parallel of this in Symphonia is Presea. Presea underwent a cruel experiment by the Crucius organization that stopped her from aging and making her an emotionless doll. When Lloyd's party helps her recover, she's struck with multiple realizations at once. She finds out that 16 years have passed and she hasn't aged a day. She also now realizes that she's been living in her parents' house with her dad's corpse decaying this entire time, too unaware to realize what was going on. Adding on to that, the village she's lived in wants nothing to do with her and ostracizes her from her community. She doesn't belong in the world she grew up in, or in the world Crucius made for her. So now Presea continues with Lloyd's group, traveling with Regal, who at the time she's unaware that they both connect to each other's past. This idea of survivors also plays in combat, much like Final Fantasy VII. In Final Fantasy VII, you have the limit break system, where if you take enough damage without getting knocked out, you can unleash a powerful limit break attack. In Symphonia, if you take enough hits without being knocked out, you enter overlimit mode, where you can't be staggered from attacks, and some characters also get an opportunity to use their most powerful attacks. This is a great way of bringing a narrative component into the gameplay that a player has control over, and with the hidden affection system, characters might trigger overlimit when somebody close to them gets knocked out in battle. Neat, huh? Pretty much every main character shares their Survivor's Trio, and these are all caused or correlated with the antagonistic group of Crucius, and how they shape the world. Lloyd and his group have seen just how twisted this world can be, and unlike the primary antagonistic group of this game, they choose to learn and grow from it instead of being stuck to the past. Crucius. They have 2 goals: show the superiority of half-elves and revive the goddess Martel. This organization has control over the church, the designs, ninjas? Yeah. And they control the flow of power between Silveron and Tetheala. Crucius is controlled by 3 central figures. They each deal with the trauma of their past in different ways. The whole point of Crucius is not to revive the goddess Martel, but the half-elf Martel, who means so much to each of them. The first of the 3 members is Ewan, who realizes that the turmoil and suffering they are putting the world through just isn't worth it. For the sake of his departed fiancée, he wants to stop this cycle of endless sacrificing. He creates a group to fight against the organization he helped build, to right the wrongs he made and to move on from his departed. Next is Kratos, who after traveling with Lloyd's group realizes that this isn't the way the world should be. Kratos lets the idea of bringing back Martel die in the hopes that Lloyd can correct this broken world. Kratos realizes that there's more to this world than throwing your life away to a cause. Instead of being shackled to their past, these 2 eventually work to move on from it and try to mend all the damage they've done. Finally, there is Mythos, who, unlike Kratos or Ewan, refuses to leave the past behind. Mythos and his sister Martel were half-elves who went on a journey to stop a war between two nations, Silverant and Tetheala. Along the way, he met two companions, Ewan and Kratos. After they stopped the war between the two nations, Martel was killed by a human. Mythos, in a panic, trapped her soul inside a Crucius crystal. From there, he split the world into two halves, founded the Designs and Crucius, and altered the course of history to try to bring his sister back. Mythos, unlike the rest of the main characters, refuses to learn and move on from his past. He is constantly living in it. He is somebody who refused to really grow up by keeping his childlike form. He's willing to sacrifice everything, the world and his friends, if it meant he got to reclaim what he lost.
Mythos, please, listen to me. What you have done is wrong. It is not what we strived for.
Wrong? Are you rejecting me?
No, I want you to remember. Please stop this and become your old self again.
Martel? Even you reject me? No. Martel would never say something like that.
Instead of looking at what happened to him and making sure nobody went through the hell he had gone through, he turned the world into what he hated the most. A world of mass prejudice where he has humans become cattle in his ranches. He has the needless sacrifices with the ritual of the chosen.
Maybe not everything can be forgiven, but one can try to atone for one's sins. Can't you feel it in your heart? The goddess known as Conscience.
His closest companions have abandoned him. His sister, who he worked so hard to bring back, rejects him. She even super dies this time, and gives up her life so that Colette can live.
Do you think I'm gonna beg for forgiveness? Ridiculous! There is no goddess, so I will continue to pursue my ideals.
In the end, he has nothing left, and in the end, he knew this would happen.
If there is no place where I can live, and if I've been denied my age of lifeless beings, then the only thing left for me is to build a new world on Darris Carlon. A world just for my sister and me.
A part of him knew deep down what he was doing was wrong, but he believed he was so far gone that the only path he could take was the one he set out for himself.
Farewell, my shadow. You who stand at the end of the path I chose not to follow. I wanted my own world, so I don't regret my choice. I would make the same choice all over again. I will continue to choose this path.
Mythos saw the discrimination of half-elves go on, and instead of trying to end things peacefully, he started up the Designs, which used human lives to create X-spheres. His plan was to trap everybody's soul inside an X-sphere and make everybody a lifeless being, just like what happened to Colette, Presea, and Martel. Mythos is killed because he refused to try any other way. He relied on only himself to decide on how everything got done. He became an island unto himself, a man who rejected every hand reached out to him. Mythos is a culmination of all the themes of this game, and because of that he shares so much with the rest of the cast. Living in a world that doesn't want you, being tied to your fate, being an outcast, being frozen in time, losing someone important to you, trying to better the world. At the end of it all, Mythos was just a stubborn boy who wanted to save his sister. He could never let go of the trauma that losing his sister caused him. And for Mythos, there was nothing anybody could do to save him or his sister. But Lloyd found a way. Through an incredible set of events created by Lloyd, his friends, his enemies, everybody in between, Lloyd was able to revive Martel as the summoned spirit of the World Tree. Why was Lloyd able to succeed when Mythos failed for trying for 4,000 years? Maybe because of the difference of ideals. Maybe because Lloyd never wanted to lose anything to reach his goals. Maybe because, unlike Mythos, Lloyd was never truly alone. If you had to ask me what makes Symphonia mean so much to me, I think that its combat is something I never saw before at the time. I think that its story still makes me think about it to this day. I think that its characters are written with such depth that they feel like real people struggling in the same world as ours. I think it's all of these and more that take their individual tones and merge them together to make them something truly unique, truly symphonic, something that means the most to me.